I didn't bring a notebook. I'm not sure I'm ready for a university lecture. Series 10. What I have called in the past my favorite series involving my favorite Doctor, Peter Capaldi. That doesn't mean it's my favorite series of New Who, but out of his run, I think it's the best. Or at least I have up to this point. We'll see what a rewatch does. And we open with the pilot. There's a lot to like here. First of all, I love the setup. I love the Doctor as a college professor, specifically this Doctor. And there's a lot, especially, going back on a rewatch and knowing what the deal with the vault is, why he's stuck on Earth. That adds some context, but I really love the idea that he can't just be gallivanting around time and space anymore, but he's still going to want to show off how smart he is. He's still going to want an audience. And so he gets himself set up so that he can just go on these rambling lectures about physics or poetry, and they're the same because of the rhymes, and just do whatever he wants. Just, a little bit show off, but also just feel like somebody's listening. This Doctor, most doctors, this Doctor particularly, does need that feedback. He needs that input. And as somebody who has and will hopefully one day again be a live performer, I get that. If you can get a live audience, friggin' do it. If you're like me, anyways. And maybe that's one more thing that this Doctor and I have in common. Now, normally, he has a companion to perform to. And yes, it's not only one person, not a crowd, but you get that closer connection. He doesn't have that, so he'll settle for a room full of people with a much shallower connection. But then he spots Bill. I love the reason that he singles Bill out. I love that explanation where, she said, "Why me?" And he says,
well, most people, when they don't understand something, they frown. You smile.
That's such a small thing, but yeah, that's totally the sort of thing he'd notice. So I love that. I also like Bill a lot. I think that Pearl Mackie brings a lot of very wonderful, grounded sensibilities to her. And they do such a fine, delicate balance here. This is an element of Bill that I could get why it wouldn't work for some people, and under normal circumstances it wouldn't work for me, but for some reason it does. I don't know if it's just the line delivery or the chemistry between the actors. I don't know, but they decide to have her ask all these questions that are the kinds of things fans would ask that the show deliberately doesn't address. Things like, well, why does this look like this? Why is this? Or like the one that off the top of my head, you can't be from another planet. TARDIS as an acronym only makes sense in English. Which is true. And the Doctor going, people usually don't bring that up. And that's a kind of character trait that normally would bother me, the sort of meta lampshade hanging. But the thing is, it doesn't feel like it's jammed in to try and make a commentary about the show or these things. It feels like a character trait. She thinks about things that other people think about, but she grabs on to details that are a little bit different from other people. She comes at things slightly sideways, and that throws off the Doctor a little bit, like how long it takes her to finally say it's bigger on the inside and the outside. And I love that Nardole punctuates that with, "Hey, we got there." Oh, and also Nardole's back, and he's balanced now. He is what there's one toilet gag. But other than that, this is what I want him to be, where he has a rapport with the Doctor. He's trying to basically be the Doctor's keeper, but he's a little bit around people. I like that, but he's not weird and awkward around the Doctor any more than he just is as an entity. But he's got a more established thing going with Capaldi's Doctor, which I love much more than certainly the first time we saw him, and even more than last time we saw him. This really feels well established, and I always like that. As fun as it can be to watch a relationship build, I have a lot of fun coming in on something that feels like it's already been there for a while. I like the feeling of well-established rapports, and I think that Nardole and the Doctor have that. They have a pretty good grip on each other and what's going on. So All right, this is a fairly minor thing, but I'm going to bring it up because it did bug me. The whole thing, so Bill, the doctor says, why are you in my class when you're not actually a student? And Bill goes on this rambling story about serving chips to this girl in the canteen and basically giving her extra chips because she was attracted to her, and that girl ended up gaining weight. Now, on the one hand, I like that Bill doesn't really have an answer and tells this rambling story, basically hoping that going through this train of thought will lead somewhere, because I'm not going to say I do that often, but I relate. But on the other hand, there's one specific line, sentence in that thing that really does bother me. I don't have a problem with the nature of the story. I don't even have a problem with the fact that Bill seems mildly taken aback at the fact that this girl is now fat. I mean, everybody has a type that they're attracted to. I do, however, take issue with the fact that she states,
that's life, isn't it? Beauty or chips.
As if beauty and weight from comfort and being anything other than a specifically prescribed size are polar opposites. You're either beautiful or you're fat. Like, she doesn't say that outright, but the way that sentence lands and the way it's framed, and even though she softens it slightly after that by going, I like chips, and so did she. Like, that takes the curse off it a little bit, but not completely. I just don't like that line really rubs me the wrong way. But it is only one line in the thing. So let's actually get to the plot of this, which is a pretty solid plot as far as companion introductory stories go, because ultimately the primary purpose of the story is to introduce Bill and set up the status quo as it currently exists at the start of this series. And it has to do all that while also telling a story. And it's a pretty good idea to have it be effectively a chase story, because that allows you to get it stripped down and not have to bog it in too many specific details, because ultimately, how are we propelling this narrative forward once the plot actually kicks in? Well, this thing is coming after us. We're trying to run away. Awesome. That is a naturally propelled, forward-moving plot that does not require that we get bogged down in a ton of stuff. So I dig that. I think that was a good call. There's some elements of Heather as a character that I'm a little bit up and down on. It's handled slightly better than my memory of it, but I'm still a little My memory of it, and part of this actually also has to do with my memory of how it comes back at the end of the series, so we'll see how well that my memory on that actually holds up. But the whole thing of it, my memory was that it pushed this idea that Bill and Heather made this instant, deep connection, and that was what drew them together. And there's that as kind of an underlying implication, but this episode does actually provide a more logistical answer so that people like me, who are grumpy buggers who hate romantic subplots, especially when it hinges on the idea of true love that is established in a very short period of time, because I hate that, there is the offering of, just before Heather died and was absorbed by this puddle, this sentient fuel, that the last thing that she had said, the last thing in her mind was this promise to Bill. Because Bill, all Bill is going to do is go around the building and come around and see her and says, you promise you won't run away? And Heather says, I promise. So for someone like me who, look, it's not that I don't like emotional storytelling. It's not even that I don't like romance, but it's not why I'm here. And I hate people taking romance and trying to cash that check for more than it's worth. And I think the idea of this, their feelings are so strong, they're drawn together, that absolutely would be that. So offering up this logistical explanation, and that's not to say you can't believe that their connection was so strong and so immediate and so deep. You can still believe that, but I don't have to. And for me, that helps a lot. But there is ultimately still the fact that Heather is not particularly well fleshed out. And the little bits we get about her, she's cute, but she and Bill, in the few times they actually talk to each other, don't seem to have an awful lot in common. So part of me is what is pulling you towards her? But then I have to remind myself how young Bill is and get out of my own damn near 40 headspace and remember that, your early 20s, that is a time where you just kind of leap into things based off of vibe or even just raw attraction. Whereas now, at my age, I would look at something like that and go, well, I mean, like, yeah, you're cute, but I'm not, like, there's nothing jibing here. We've talked, and, like, you've said almost the exact opposite of everything I said, and I'm old enough to know that the opposites attract thing, that's, no. You gotta connect somewhere. But, you know, they're in their 20s. So, you know what? I can let that go, too. There is, of course, the inherent issue of, you know, this does factor in some ways into the bury your gaze trope because, I mean, Heather is established to at least be open to an attraction to Bill and is basically killed as soon as she indicates that she might actually be open to starting something serious. And even though it's not as an egregious case of bury your gaze often is, because she is not 100% of the queer population of this episode, because Bill's still around, it is still 50% of the known queer populace of the episode. And in addition to that, it does bother me that basically as soon as it is established that maybe there is something between these two, now she's dead. Like, the timing of that irks me. As for the fuel itself, it's a neat concept, and the execution of it really feels like an amalgam of like 3 different things, because to some degree it's kind of got the lodger thing with that spaceship that needed a pilot, and and it's taking the drives and the instincts of the pilot to that, and that is determining some of what it's doing. So that's at play. Visually, it's very reminiscent of the Flood from Waters of Mars, especially when we see Heather just standing there just dripping under that dark tree when Bill, first sees her after she dies. And then it's pulling on Midnight for a certain extent as well, because once she has become whatever the heck you want to call it that she is, all she's doing is mimicking. Now, that's actually pretty well played later when Bill releases her and says her goodbyes, that she says a line and then Heather says it back in it. Even though the words are the same, the meaning becomes different because of the delivery. That's actually really well done, and I do like that. But it is just kind of a mashup of 3 existing ideas and concepts shoved into one thing. And I mean, it works well enough. I do like that while there is the visual nod to the Flood, I like that there was a higher emphasis on the audio, that she's around because you hear dripping. Whereas Waters of Mars was like, there weren't a lot of drips. Definitely not audio level. Generally, if the water was there, it was flooding in. So here, to have it just be this, that little single sounds of water dropping, like, ooh, that's actually a good audio cue to create tension. And it's the kind of thing that you can lay into the background ahead of when the characters notice it, see if the audience catches it first. And that's well done. And I dig that for the most part. I do have to wonder, like, with fuel that is like this, it does feel like a little bit of an overpowered thing, for lack of a better way to put it. It's like, this is the kind of technology that seems so incredibly potent, like it can follow the TARDIS all the way through time and space at will, and it just leaked out of a spaceship? Like just a normal spaceship, so far as we can tell? Okay. I mean, like, I roll with it, okay, but it is one of those things that's like, how common is this? Like, it's fuel, more or less. How common is this that we had, like, this seems like such a leap in technology from anything else that we've seen, and it's like so advanced, and yet it's such a common thing. Like, fuel is a common item, and generally, if you're talking about any piece of technology, lots of things will run on the same fuel, and like, how many things have this kind of potent power behind them? I don't know. That's thinking about it too much, though. Honestly, within the confines of the episode, it works. It certainly does. This episode has a lot of really fun small nods that I appreciate. I love the little pencil jar full of sonic screwdrivers. I love the picture of Susan. I like that there's a picture of River on his desk. Those are great, especially because, like, those are the kinds of things you'd expect someone to just have on their work desk. But to us as the audience, if we recognize these characters, and I mean, I would expect most to recognize River, but especially if you recognize Susan, oh, That hits, and that's sweet, and I love that. Oh, you know what? There's this little moment between the interaction with the Doctor and Bill that I love, and it reminded me of Ace in the terms of not putting up with the Doctor's crap, because, you know, the Doctor and Bill have been bantering for a little bit, and Bill says something to the effect of, I always wanted to be at this university, and the Doctor gets mocking with it. He gets a little mean. He says,
What are you doing at this university?
I always wanted to come here.
Yeah, to serve chips.
So anyway, am I nearly done?
I love that. It's without making a big scene, without being like, hey, you can't talk to me like that. I still get that sense of strength from her, like, that is just great to see. And it's really well delivered in the line delivery and just the nature of that interaction. Just small pause. We finished. And like, there was a lot of strength in that little pause and that line delivery. That was good. I like it. We get the introduction of the Vault, which, you know, it's this season's or series' mystery box. Bleh. I'll jump ahead a little bit. I do like that we get the answer to what's in the vault fairly well ahead of the actual finale of the series. I appreciate that as a shakeup, but it is still planting the same mystery box. Ooh, don't you wonder what's in the... Just tell me a story. Don't give me this friggin' dangle a carrot. If you're telling me a good story, I'll want to stick around regardless. You shouldn't have to have me sticking around just to solve a mystery, especially when the answers usually aren't that interesting. So I don't like that it's there as a setup, but as far as the mystery boxes goes, I don't find it especially egregious in the scope of these things. Oh, you know what's another thing? And I had totally forgotten this. In the next time on Doctor Who, this isn't super uncommon, not just for Doctor Who, but for shows like this in general that have shot their entire seasons or series before the first episode airs. It's not a next episode. It's like shows stuff from across the whole series. And they spoil John Sim as the Master in that next time. I'd completely forgotten that they did that. And shame on them for it. The hell? I think that's everything. Oh, there's some really nice laying for stuff that is definitely going to matter later when they first get into the TARDIS and the Doctor says, you're safe in here and I promise you always will be. So there's that. And also I love, this kind of epitomizes why Capaldi in Series 10 is my favorite of his take on the Doctor and why I feel like the Doctor has settled into where he should be, because like I've said this before, Series 8 he was very standoffish and grumpy. Series 9 he seemed like he was trying too hard to be cool. Series 10 he feels free to be silly. It feels like he's let both his guard and his facade down. So there's moments like Bill asking, what's the sky made of? And the Doctor says, lemon drops. Really? No, but wouldn't that be something? It's just this wonderful, small, silly moment. I'm like, oh, this is you being comfortable. And I'm really happy seeing Capaldi's Doctor comfortable after everything else he's been through. The pilot, solid start to what is, to my memory, a solid series. Have you rewatched it lately? What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something on down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Usual stuff, like, share, subscribe. There's a Patreon that helps cover my bills and ensure that this channel continues to be up and running. In addition to that, there is, of course, the usual stuff, the likes, the shares, the subscribes. I have merch. I am on other social media. Check them out, or don't. You don't have to. End of the day, you are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. Until next time, this council is adjourned.